What's up, everybody? I am driving, but I'm not looking at you right now, so I feel like this is relatively safe. It'd be sort of like me pontificating to a buddy that's riding in the car, which I do from time to time, if it seems appropriate. So a couple weeks ago, a random woman gave me another woman's number. This happens not a lot, but I call it alley-ooping. They will alley-oop each other, play matchmaker. They typically don't tell the other woman. They give me the number first, and they see what I'm going to do. Sometimes they prattle about it. Kind of depends. But a few weeks ago, I was given a number, and I asked some questions first before I just took someone's random information. But I said, okay, worst thing that could happen is it doesn't work. Or it does work. So, sweet. Thanks for the number. I was polite. I haven't called her yet. Don't know if I will. But my mother the other day asked me if I did call this lady, and she every now and then just asks me about like my love life. Typical story, right? And I'd say at this point, there's 7 or 8 women in my local vicinity that I get along well with, that seem to like me, I seem to like them. I would call that a genuine attraction. Like there's 7 or 8 people, and I'm like, yeah, I'd do that. That's pretty cool. It's a trope for sons to be annoyed by their mothers meddling in their love life. And in the past, it certainly hasn't worked out well when she tried to set me up with people. But that's neither her fault nor the person that it didn't work out with. I think it's just, it is what it is. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I trust her intuition. I trust her intuition when it comes to women. Not necessarily the maneuver, not necessarily jump on that one. But I've relaxed a lot when it comes to what I call mindful awkwardness. Things you'd rather not do because they feel weird, and you often have a hard time putting your finger on what's weird about it. I feel like you always have the option to breathe through your nose and find a decent maneuver. And the older I get, the less, ironically, patience I have for people that are easily triggered. They cross their arms either literally or symbolically, and then at that point they're just like holding back energy and then telling me what's what. And then usually they can tell me what's what once, and then twice, and then 3 times. It's almost like you can watch the energy dissipate, but they need to tell me what's what once I've insulted their idol. And like at this point, I'm in an interesting place socially, because my own idealism was what was preventing me from making the changes in my life that I needed to make. I was a little too head in the clouds about life. I'm no longer so airy-fairy, if you will. Like, I've demarcated the territories that I'm interested in philosophically and psychologically. And I'm an artist, I'm inspired, I know that I'm an artsy-fartsy type, that I'm a sensitive person, I'm aware. I'm also 33 years old, so like, I've had time to practice. And in a weird way, fixing things with my mother, and then like, returning to the stuff that I kind of dropped for a while, as far as the feminist literature, the visionary stuff. I was, for a long time, trying to cut things down to brass tacks and simplify my life, and I'm glad I did that. It was good for me, and my game with the ladies, my social life, all the stuff that I was having trouble with and trying to address has more or less been rectified by that process of simplification, connecting dots. I think that there are times where I think about something, I want to give advice. I'm like, this is what I would say. This is my opinion about that social situation. And one thing that I've been tempted to say, but I haven't said, is that if you want to get better with women, you should probably heal your relationship with, your mother or your sister or your cousins that are female. Like, find a formal relationship with a female where the incest barrier is clearly there, and then find a way to make that work. Because if you do, it will give you objective insight into how you as a man relate to your other, how you relate to the flip side of your humanity. And I'm pretty convinced at this point that if you can make progress in that domain, and again, when I say fix things with your mom or your sister or whatever, it's not like a math problem. It's never fixed. It never will be. This is what drives men nuts about women, because they can seemingly just go on and on and on about nothing forever. And at the end of it, despite your best effort, you still look like the bad guy, even though you didn't start it and you were trying to be the shoulder to cry on in the first place. And this is why a lot of guys, they get cold and they're like, I'm not going to be used again. There's a phrase that's used in the manosphere a lot, emotional tampon. It's such a powerful phrase because that is what a lot of men are used for. And women hate that phrase. Oh, they hate it. That triggers women faster than anything. Because it's true. They know it's true. And whether or not they can justify that in their own head, I don't know and I don't care. What I do know now is that if you can give yourself enough buffer to realize what's happening, don't tell them that you know. Don't even show it with your body language and your tone. Simply find the next maneuver. That's what a man's job is. It's not to tell other people how to live. It's not to set things right. It's not to rule the roost. The only time in which you're in that role is if you're married and you have children and you're a dad. Then you do have to kind of rule the roost. You do have to kind of set things right. You do have to observe and monitor and be a kind of meta mind that's in the room that's doing that. But one thing that I think has happened, and this is just me pontificating, the breakdown of the nuclear family, if you will, the atrophy of the social institution of the family has led to a lot of confusion about what we think we know, what we think our role is, our attitude in relation to other people. This is something that occurred to me many years ago, but it often takes me a long time to connect the dots. I used to be frustrated at people, and at the time I was like, at the end of our conversation, I feel vaguely patronized, and I didn't know how. I didn't know why. I didn't know what it was. It just felt like you're relating to me in the wrong way, like you're doing something odd. And my autism is also a layer here, because people don't know how to read me. My first sensei told me that. He's like, I'm usually pretty good at reading people, and I have no read on you whatsoever. Like, you can fly off the handle or shake my hand and tell me you love me. I have no idea. I have no idea. I have no read on you. I do think I've gotten better as far as being jovial, being relaxed, figuring out that discipline and that whole thing for me is not necessarily this strong stoic figure type thing. It feels fake if I do that. It's not real. It's not me. I'm not that way. I like to smile. I like to talk to people. I like to get along with people. And to make a long story short, being second born is a part of that. it's very typical for people that are not the firstborn or only children to be sort of like diplomatic people, to be people that are kind of like trying to make it work. They like to grease the social wheels. I'm not the person who's going to cross my arms and be mean to someone because they deserve it. Like, I've never been cool with that, and I never will be. And one of the things about that I've discovered, my fear that people will mistake my kindness for weakness or pick on me, it actually makes sense. Physicality underlies rhetoric and how we speak. This is something that Jocko Willink talks about. But that's just a basic fact of life. That big people act different than small people, and it gets weird with training because it's like, well, yeah, I'm not big, but I've been doing this for damn near 7 years. There's no guarantees, but like, no, I don't think you can take me. Why are you suggesting that with your body language and tone? And then the people that like to do that, they get off on it. They don't care. They enjoy it. One thing that I discovered about cracking codes and figuring that out is like, okay, so they're sadists. They're aware of it. They may reject the label, but at the end of the day, if the conversation proceeds long enough, what'll happen is there'll be a back and forth between me saying, hey, you're overdoing it, you're being cruel for no reason, and them going, well, you're just being a pussy. And I'm like, well, fair enough, I don't want to be a pussy. So now I'm trying to get more information out of them. Maybe it's not sadism, but it is. It totally is. They enjoy hurting people a little bit. That's how they look at that. And I think in a lot of ways, men like me were made for men like that. If they go too far, I'm actually not a pussy. I'm not going to gas myself. And I would like to win if we actually fight. Now you can take that basic truth, and if you go just a little bit under the surface, it starts getting dark. And if you go deeper, it gets even darker. And I think this is one of the reasons why people who are like, you know, more dramatic and imaginative than practical and logical, it has to do with that. They're scared of themselves, not other people. This is something that I think people mistake with the beta male phenomenon. And I don't like the word beta male because it's an arbitrary thing that we say to just refer to a man that we perceive as weak or defective in some way. And there's a lot of people that people think are being beta, and they're not. That guy actually takes the woman home at the end of the night. Or that guy actually doesn't waste his energy in frivolous nonsense, whereas somebody else does. The flip side of that is that some of these big dumbos, and that's what they are, they ooga booga and they basically act like children, and they get laid too. But they only get laid by loose women. They don't really get the good girl. A truly good woman is autonomous. She's not dependent. She's not somebody that you hook with the bullshit, nor is she somebody that you rap with like your boys. It's something else. And I don't claim to know what that something else is. What I do know is that the answers that we need are often right where we don't want to go. And so people that tend to be more masochistic are inherently being gifted with more of that insight than they know what to do with. And the sadists and the people that are just fighting their way through life, that actually secretly or overtly enjoy hurting others, they, you know, they calcify their own ignorance thereby. That's what's going on. And sometimes ignorance is bliss, and sometimes the bully gets the girl. And I think that makes a lot of dudes feel dejected because they did the right thing and there was no reward for that. And not only that, they seem to be deconstructing their own base in the process. They can tell that it's making them more unstable, and they don't like that either. So again, I'm often saying things and then backing it up and flipping it. And I don't do that because I'm wishy-washy or relativist. I do that because there's two angles. And which angle is appropriate in a given situation is indeed relative to the situation you are in. I think that's what consciousness is about, the capacity to step back and do that. which was really what I meant when I said I no longer have as much patience, which is ironic given the subject matter that I'm talking about here. I'm no longer patient with people that know they're right. At that point, I'm going to step back. I'm not taking you very seriously. If you speak of grand matters, such as God, such as freedom, such as justice, issues of racial inequality or sexual issues, no, you're not an expert. They don't exist. That's what I want to say when people get all huffy. It's actually absurd and comedic. It's funny. It's odd. It makes me feel bad for the people that are close to you. Because who knows when you're just going to drift off into, oh, I'm God now land. And again, it's not a conscious revelation. If it was, you wouldn't do it. And I've done it. My version of doing it is a lot different than the typical alpha male or the boss bitch, or, you know, it's like I'm different. I can rev my mind up and then unify various threads in a way which bypasses some of the firewalls to these meta-narratives, and I can plant ideas in people's heads that are novel. That process by itself is not necessarily good. Number one, because my goal is not to make people uncomfortable. Again, I'm a diplomat. I'm trying to help people. I'm a good guy. I'm not trying to do anything toward it. Nor do I believe that I'm special. I'm just trying to make it work. I'm seeking sufficiency and sanity. And it's fun, and it's funny, and it's odd, because, like, I'm a nerd, and now I'm, like, real fit. I'm more comfortable with game and my social life. It's like I started receiving attention that I'm not used to. And then on top of that, the habits of mind which form over many years don't just go away because you get some insight and you're like, oh, maybe it's a simple answer, and it just takes practice. So you apply the simple insight and you do the practice. I'm still used to being a nerd with an inferiority complex. So I don't recognize right off the bat when a chick is into me or when a dude is trying to bully me. And then I'm dedicated to decency, and then my body will just autonomically shift the energy around and I'll find the thing to say or whatever. And my intent was never to be a badass or to get the girl or whatever. To be honest, it's just adapting. I'm just trying to get along. I'm just trying to live. And I think there's some sort of bizarre paradox about that actually is the answer most of the time. Jung said something that stuck with me regarding wisdom and anger. He said that wisdom is never rage. Never. That's a pretty absolute statement. And one thing that I found about good old boys and people that have a simple ethic, if you will, and sometimes that's a good thing for your ethics to be simplified. People need that. They're harboring that. They think, yeah, that's mostly right, but it's okay to kill terrorists or pedophiles or whoever. And I'm not saying that that's not sensible. The problem is that people are too comfortable labeling people as evil. So yeah, if you catch someone murdering someone, they should probably be executed. And pedophiles should be jailed. And terrorists should be either executed or jailed. But what if you label someone and they're not? And I think that every time you do label someone when they're not, you're nurturing the seeds of rage. Of all the things that you think you hate, the thing which you think that you have the right to destroy, you're actually watering the plant. And it's going to be in your dreams. And it's going to be in the background of your life. And there was a period of time where the thought, I hate people who falsely label people to the same degree that I hate the evil itself. And I just don't say it out loud, and I try not to let it affect me, because that's a far more common thing. And I've thought about this for a while. Is that better than, I don't know, what's the null hypothesis here? The regression to the primal horde in Freud. There were some other philosophers. Thoreau. Was Thoreau the noble savage? I'm trying to remember. But the whole idealism of the primordial man, I think, is that. It's the recognition that despite my diplomacy, despite my kindness, I really am a horny bastard. And I will fight someone and hurt them. I don't want to. Don't ask me to do something I don't want to do. If I have to fight, I have no other options. If I don't have to fight, I do. And I'm pretty sure that's what civilization is, and without men like me, it wouldn't exist. And there's a lot of dudes who do this regarding the things I've been discussing. But at the end of the day, it's just them surfing on the primal energy. I don't really buy that they've bottled it up sufficiently. I don't think they would vent as much of it as they do if they really had a decent membrane. And this is the thing about irrational beliefs and maturation. Like, it's an irrational belief for me to think at 33 years old I shouldn't be dealing with bullying. Aren't we adults? Why is this happening? And it's too easy of an answer for me to be like, well, I got nothing better to do. You know, I guess they just, you know, they may not have what you have, so that's a justification. And I won't justify it. I don't believe it. I don't believe that at all. I don't think that people who are poor have the right to bully me because they might think I'm some sort of playboy based on my clothing selection. I don't think that people have the right to bully me just because I use language that may be more verbose than what they're used to. I'm well aware of the phenomenon of people using 5-letter words to sound smart. That's not what I'm doing. I used it because I felt it was appropriate, and god damn it, I've been studying for like 19 years. And I care about the difference. I care about the difference. I'm not trying to be super smart. I'm not trying to be a badass. I'm just being me. And then there's a frustration because there's a disconnect. Like, what I've learned now is that when they do that, knowledge isn't useless because I'm aware of the rhetorical form it takes. And then, yes, I speculate. I call it the toddler homunculi. That basically, education as we know it has taken a radical shift. And what I used to assume was the basics in primary and secondary education, and then sometimes college or a trade school, that there was a stair stepping, and that all along the way you were supposed to learn how to properly relate to people. With the internet and these freaking smartphones, like, you don't have to do that anymore. You can just stare at the screen and the screen will tell you what to believe. Or better yet, the screen is a means by which you can just filter content until it just goes, oh yeah, it makes sense again. It feels good. It feels right. But how does one learn to disagree? How does one learn to objectively question what the screen says? People think they're doing all these things. People think they're doing these things. But I'm skeptical because of, and I've said this before, if the screen is flashing images at you at, 32 or 64 frames a second, and there's a produced audio accompanying that, well, science tells us that it's not the same as just talking to someone face to face. Everybody talks about that. Like, people say all these things online because they would be afraid to in person. And I'm weird when it comes to that because I actually enjoy when people push back a little. I enjoy when people say things without saying things and imply things beyond the obvious, because I think that that's beautiful. It means we share something. And there's a link between that and the human spirit. And a lot of the stuff I've been studying today is about technocratic society. And the guy that I'm reading, he published it in like 88. The technocratic society that he was critiquing and talking about had to do probably predominantly with the television revolution. That even that information exchange being exponentially amplified. Everybody's got a TV, everybody's got the network. And what's happened now is that with the internet, the good old boy network, for all of its flaws and security, just doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't. This is the irony of people that are arguing about the woke stuff. It's like, we've never been more woke. We've never been more tolerant. We've never been more conciliatory to differences. And we've never been better. The idea that people think they need to go protest when it's all going to get shared tomorrow and, whatever event happens, and not just get shared, but basically people are just allowed to bitch and say whatever, and they can just filter out anyone that tells them they're wrong. And then that's step one, right? And step two is recognizing that process, wanting to work on yourself, seeking out people that don't just agree with me, but also push back sometimes, blah, blah, blah. That's step two. The third step is a synthesis, in which you take that process, you recognize its beginning, you start working on yourself and working to get new forms of information for yourself, and then you just keep going. And then incidentally, you stop and you take a look back and you go, oh, wow. I've changed. I've grown. The world's changed. The world's grown. As long as you're doing that, I feel like that's legit. And everybody's looking for answers. Or they're not looking at all. I don't know which is worse. Like people who have given up and who are just floating. The people who are trying to affect the change. My whole rant has been about that. Like, y'all shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not listening to the people who actually do. And then I think the wisdom of the people who actually do know some stuff is maybe it's better to not get involved. Maybe it's better to not get involved. I mean, I've thought about this a lot. In relation to the love question, for example, I no longer have the excuse of saying that, that I don't have what it takes to get the women, because they're responding. Like it's real. It's just in my face. Like, I think it's hubris to call them choosing signals. I prefer the phrase, oh my goodness vibes, because that just makes more sense. But they exist. There are certain objective parameters to modern females that you're like, if she's doing these things, yes. And it's hilarious because as soon as I say that, any female watching this is probably like, you think you know something. No, I don't. No, I don't. Decent maneuvers and a pattern repeating itself. It's objective. This is why, I'm not going to make a dating book. I'm not going to become some manosphere coach. I'm not going to do any of that. Number one, because I don't want to deal with the headache. Number two, I kind of feel like that's me playing God. That's me tinkering with stuff that I shouldn't tinker with. It's not up to me. If women want to form opinions, erroneous or otherwise, and then live their lives the way they do, fine. And if men want to form opinions, erroneous or otherwise, and live the way they do, fine. And then out of that primordial dynamic, if people want to shuffle the deck and create a new identity and make different assumptions, which is all people are doing whenever they identify as one of these new identities, fine, go ahead. Like, I don't care. I just want to be able to live my life and share some thoughts. And at this point, go ahead, hate on me, call me a racist, call me a sexist, or call me a beta male or a pussy. Like, I don't care. I don't care about that. That's just a maneuver. You've made a move. Now I know what your move is. And sarcasm and loose language has been incredibly healing for me on that ground. Like, anytime you see something on the internet, remember that someone may just be playing a game with you. They may not be serious. It's like, oh, this is my best take. This is my best run at it. I don't presume to know. I hope you liked it. I hope it was entertaining. And no, I don't have any answers for you. Your answers are your own. I'm merely sharing ideas. And I may not be nearly as committed as you think I am. Or I might die on the fucking hill. You'll never know. You'll never know. My words are not that powerful. I'm not that powerful. And I don't think any human being is. And I think accepting that is what I needed more than anything. And I think that's probably what most people need. The acceptance of our human limitations. I think that there's some sort of like thing that we kind of want to root for when we see someone going against the grain or challenging the circumstances. But I just don't care anymore about what most people care about. Unless what they care about is family and friendship and the truth. And maybe style. Maybe I should put style in there. As soon as I say the truth, it's like the truth. And it's like, well, maybe to tell you that truth, I have to flip the script a little bit and play with it so you can get an idea. Because my whole point is a state of consciousness. It's not a particular nugget. Something like that.